got the cornfield calm, Midwest tone, but he's spitting facts like a dog with a bone. Lanky frame, fire-haired eyes on the case, breaking down the game in the darkest place. Sports scores to murder boards, Hoosier logic cuts like swords. From Friday lights to chalked out lines, this redhead's brain rewrites the lines. Inside the Hoosier mind, where the stories twist and stats unwind. He's a legend in flannel, mic in hand, digging deep where few can stand. From touchdowns to crime scenes raw, he's got the truth in every draw. Yeah, step in if you dare to find what's brewing inside the Hoosier mind. He'll talk Pacers, Colts, or Colts on trial. Hoosier humor with a devilish smile. He's that redhead sleuth with a box of clues. Takes your headline, breaks the news. With every stat and every scream, he's painting portraits in your stream. Don't blink, he'll tie it tight. From game night wins to murder plight. Inside the Hoosier mind, where the facts hit hard and the lines are blind. He's a ginger ninja, sleuth and slick, cracking cases play by play quick. From courtrooms to the hardwood floor, he digs for more than just the score. Tune in and don't rewind, you're deep now inside the Hoosier mind.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, helping give veterans a voice. Back with the Shy Kid, Mike Hughes, back once again to talk some sports because, man, we had a wild weekend of college football, and so far the NFL season off to a good start. Mm-hmm. Unless you're like us and you're Bears or Bengals fans, then the season not so bueno. Not so bueno. But how are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. It's been a minute. It's been a little bit. Got acclimated to the new job. Obviously, I wanted to do a show last weekend, but Anthony Rizzo retires from the Chicago Cubs. Got this hat at the Cubs game. Took my mama. It's nice. It's their city edition this year. They're representing Chicago blues music. So the Cubby Bears got a little guitar in his hand. I think it's pretty cool, pretty smooth. Okay. Yeah, it was like my shirt. You see, like it's how blue like that. The hats were originally blue like that with the bear. Wasn't rocking with that too hard, but when I saw this navy, I said, that right there, that's a Picasso. It's beautiful.
I say, and it goes with anything you got with the Bears because it's the Navy. Oh, yeah. So I mean, it works perfectly. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, buddy, let's get into everything because we got a jam-packed show. We got so much to talk about. We got the guy that's led the national headlines in college football, at least, and old Arch Manning. And buddy, he's been struggling the last couple of weeks, and he's been facing like I'm not gonna say crap teams, but he's been facing lesser quality opponents.
Sure.
And he's still struggling. You know, obviously this most recent game, Texas won 27-10 against UTEP. He ran for 2 touchdowns. And I know you and I and Frankie and Randy all talk about this in the group chat, but buddy, he was 11-25, a touchdown, a passing touchdown, an interception, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns. So let me propose this question to you, buddy. Do you think between the expectations because of his last name, because he's a Manning, because he's Peyton and Eli's nephew, and the fact that the media and everybody hyped him up to be the next greatest thing to hit college football since Trevor Lawrence, since Tim Tebow, since all these great college quarterbacks, do you think they put too high of expectations, too high of standards? And it's one of those, we still got to remember, it's his junior year. We had a super small sample size last year when he had to fill in for Quinn Ewers. So nobody really had tape on him for, a collegiate standpoint. Nobody knew really what he was going to do. So he had that advantage of, I don't have a lot of tape on me. I can ball out. Nobody really knows what I can do yet because they haven't seen me do it at this level.
Yeah.
But now coming into this season, they do have that little bit of film and that little bit of tape. Do you think the expectations and the standards have almost reached too much for even Arch to deal with, or do you think it's still just 3 games into the season? There's still time.
I definitely think there's still time. I think having that expectation of what the remainder of the season is going to look like for Arch Manning is everything. If you're going into this season thinking he's going to win a Heisman, then I think you're definitely going to disappoint yourself. We still could potentially see a senior year out of Arch. I don't see him declaring for the draft. I don't see that being a situation. I mean, he could. And that's a realistic possibility. But when you look at a team like the New Orleans Saints or somebody along those lines getting the number 1 overall pick, I think I'd stay another year. I don't know about you, but I definitely do think at this point in time, for a guy like Arch, you're looking at the first game, they lose 7-14 to the defending champs in Ohio State, the Ohio State University. He's 17 for 30, obviously 56% completion rating, not the best, 170 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And that is what it is. Rushing, he had 38 yards. I've seen, man, this is the most mobile Manning I think I've ever seen. So I'll give him his praise in that much. I mean, I think he's already got 100 rushing yards in 3 games. It's probably more than Peyton Manning ever had in a single season, but it's neither here nor there. But then you look at obviously back-to-back wins, pretty good in game 2 against San Jose State. You're looking 19 for 23 completions versus attempts, 63% completion, 295 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Pretty solid, 23 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. So 5 total TDs in his second game. And it's just a roller coaster of a season, because then we have this past week, obviously UTEP, they go against them 27-10. They win, like you said, 11 for 25, 114 passing yards. I mean, 2 rushing touchdowns, cool, but like 1-1 for touchdown interception ratio. I just don't know what you're going to see out of him if they get to a bowl game. You know what I mean? If they get into that position to where the lights are the brightest, does Arch Manning make other players around him better? I think that's the question a lot of people are going to have to start asking if you're viewing him as a future number 1 overall pick. And that's what it comes down to for me. I don't think we're at that point yet. But Tone, I would also argue that there's a lot of grace for a guy like Arch Manning right now. There's a lot of, we just got to wait and see. But we've seen time and time again, a guy like Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields or so many other greats that have come before us come into college going into their sophomore year after their redshirt year and absolutely dominate. So I don't know how much time you're really willing to give them. If you tell me that this is just kind of like a get your feet wet year going into senior year, if I'm an NFL GM or executive and I have the number 1 pick, I would be afraid to just base the 2026 season off of if I'm giving you the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. Well, here is the lucky thing, and I had to look just to see as well. So he is a redshirt. So he actually was able to graduate high school early and come into Texas. So this is technically his sophomore year. So he could technically even have 2 more years after this if he really, really wants to.
He might need it.
He might, and there are rumors and theories that he might not declare for the draft yet. Like you said, if I'm Arch and you're already struggling right now with Texas, with Texas recruits really, really well, if anything, and they got a whole lot of money to be able to throw at it to be able to recruit well. And I did like what you said because it was something I thought of earlier. This is probably the most athletic Manning we've ever seen, but I will say in contrast too, he doesn't seem like a gunslinger like what we're used to. Like Peyton was a statue. He's dissecting your defense. He's reading your routes. He's knowing exactly where people are going and he's putting the ball there. Eli was just more of that back school, fudge it. They're down there somewhere. I'm just going to throw it up there and hopefully my guy catches it. If not, I'm going to just get picked off and it is what it is. It seems to me Arch doesn't have either one of those qualities. And that's what I think is probably the most weird. Probably, at least for me, and I don't know about you because I know you grew up watching both Mannings. I grew up watching both Mannings, and it's like this is not what I'm used to seeing, like a Manning rushing for a touchdown. Like it just doesn't happen. And I'm not even saying I expect perfection out of him. I don't expect him to come in there and dissect teams like Peyton used to, or even be kind of the backyard brawler like Eli. But some of the statistics, that's a lot of what I'm kind of worried about. Like you said. You go on the road. Your first true game as a starter is against the defending national champs, Ohio State Buckeyes. Matt Patricia's lead the defense. They have a ton of great defensive skill players. Like, okay, that one you can take an L, and that I'm not going to hold too much against you because that's the first game. The second game, though, you're at home. It's San Jose State. You're 19 of 30, 295. Now, those 4 touchdown passes you threw were all in the span of quote unquote 5 minutes, but you had 60 minutes in the game to do something, and you just didn't. And you threw a pick in that game. He's thrown a pick in every game so far this year. And then against UTEP, you go 11 to 25, 114 yards. So you were 44% completion. You have a touchdown and a pick, but you have 2 rushing touchdowns. So total, he accounts for 9 touchdowns and three picks. It does make me wonder a little bit. I don't think I'm worried overall for his future, but it's just weird that he started out this rough, considering the fact of he's been at Texas, almost going on 3 years. So, I mean, you've had the chance to sit back, learn from, honestly, a pretty decent veteran guy in Quinn Ewers of how to play, what to expect. You can learn Sark's offense because Sark has been there the entire time. You've had a chance to really grow and learn. And it just initially, at least in the beginning of this season, it doesn't seem like that is truly correlated over as compared to the small sample size we had last year. Mm-hmm. It's like, wait a minute, you threw almost 1,000 yards just in the couple of games that you did participate in last year. And now, we're 3 games into the season. You're sitting here just under 600 yards and you're a 2-to-1 interception, touchdown interception ratio. It's not what, again, like I said, maybe it's the media, maybe it's, just kind of looking at what we had sample size last year and like, man, the expectations are going to be crazy next year for him. And, him just not being able to meet it. So it's a little disappointing. I'm not writing him off, but it's one of those, it's like, really? Like
it's not a write-off, but I think you have to have a level of consistency in what we're doing here, because the way Arch was treated versus a Shedeur Sanders, who is what, QB4 for the Cleveland Browns right now?
He's 3. They traded Kenny Pickett.
Shout out to him, climbing the ranks from the bottom. We like it out the mud. You know what I mean? We don't want to hand it to us.
Exactly. You got to work for it.
Right. But with that, I do want to make a point. In Shedeur's first year at Colorado, he threw 3 interceptions the entire season. And Arch has thrown 3 interceptions in 3 games. So, and an interception every single game. It's not like one bad game. So it's something to point out to where, just because that's your last name, we've seen that shouldn't play a role into where you're drafted, because if that was the case, then Shedeur would have been drafted in the first round just because his last name is Sanders. But we've obviously seen very different versions of how your last name can impact your draft stock. Obviously, Arch is a very different guy compared to Shedeur. I don't expect Arch to be, pulling up with, an entourage or anything at the draft. But, I definitely do think at the end of the day, man, you have to call a spade. And we've seen others come through these doors with far better numbers and get drafted later on. So if we see a season from Arch Manning where he's thrown 10 plus interceptions, Tone, and we're still talking about him potentially declaring for the draft and being the number 1 overall pick, I just don't think that's earned yet. And I don't like doing that, but it's the hype that he didn't create. You know what I mean? He just was born into. I think everybody's got to let Arch be Arch and let the film call it what it is. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens, man. But just wanted to throw that little nugget in there, because I do think it's interesting how, you have a guy like Shedeur who helped make Travis Hunter a Heisman wide receiver. And on the other side of things, man, Arch Manning, kind of off to a worse start, and we're still talking about him being this generational piece that you and I both would agree we just haven't seen that word generational from his game yet.
Yeah, and I think the one thing for Shedeur, because funny enough, I did see a thread on this on Facebook. Somebody had pointed out about they compared Arch Manning's first game against Ohio State versus Shedeur's with TCU, and they're like, oh yeah, Shedeur dropped, I think it was like 300 or 400 passing yards on TCU, and they were just in the national title game. And I'm like, yeah, but if you also remember that season, they went 4-8, and as soon as they started facing true quality opponents like Oregon, they got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, and TCU was never seen again.
No. So they weren't seen until they went until they beat Bill Belichick and UNC the other night, badly. But no, I mean, I'll say this for Shedeur, because the more I remember watching him in college, and the more I do kind of study his game, he has gotten better as each year has progressed. Even when he was at Jackson State, he got better each year. But I kind of considered that, big fish in a little pond type thing. Then he goes to the big pond with the other big fish in the Power 4 group. And then, okay, now he's kind of back down to earth. He still had a pretty fantastic season statistically, but the wins just weren't there. And then immediately the next year, they end up winning 8 games. They're technically in contention for the Big 12 title and whatnot. Not necessarily for the playoffs, but for the potential Big 12, and then they even go to a bowl game. So he's gotten better. I'll give him that. But I have seen those weird comparisons with like him and Arch. It's like, oh, look at the first game, and I'm like, yeah, but overall, what did that season look like? We have no idea what Arch's season is going to look like. His may be just as bad, if not worse. We don't know yet.
Sure.
But yeah, that was an interesting comparison that I saw and I've seen a lot of people make. Let's talk about though probably the best game of the entire weekend that all of us kind of circled. I asked you and Randy, picks wise, like who should I go with? Both of you said you're rocking Big Orange, but you're like, man, until they beat Georgia, it's hard for us to tell. In all honesty, that was an absolute classic game. Like you had everything you could look for, even though the score was 44-41. There was actually some pretty solid defense in that game on both sides, even though the scoreboard would not justify that. There was. Now that the playoffs have expanded, do you think this really hurts either team? Like, to me, this doesn't really hurt Tennessee. Like, even though they have a loss, I still think Tennessee has a true potential to even go into the SEC championship. And who knows, this might even be a repeat. We might have Tennessee versus Georgia again for the SEC. We don't know how the season's going to pan out, but at least early on, just 3 games into the season, that was probably one of the best games. And it looked like both of these teams were clicking in literally every single thing that they were doing.
No, 100%. Obviously, it hurts watching the farthest right kick I have ever seen in quite some time. Last time I saw a kick that bad, it was Seattle versus Minnesota in the playoffs in 2012, 2013, something like that.
I think it was 2013.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Absolutely terrible. I'll never forget that in my life. But it's also the double doink. But we're not gonna.
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
That wasn't even that far. It was just like
the bad part. He hit the goalpost. He just didn't hit the goalpost where he needed to hit the goalpost.
His job just didn't finish the job. You feel me?
Right.
But no, man, it definitely was a heartbreaker. But it's one of those ones you live in or you die by the sword. At the end of the day in college football, this isn't the NFL where kickers are just automatic from 20, 30 yards. This is, we've all played the game. What happens when that stadium gets loud. It is what it is at the end of the day. The whole room starts shaking and get a little crazy.
Whole post control. Can't see my wide receiver routes. They're shaky.
Man, dude, it's the worst thing in the world. You think you're like you got vertigo or something. But it's crazy, man. It's crazy. I do think this is good for the Tennessee Volunteers to really show that they can compete with one of the best of them. Obviously, Aguilar is a new quarterback in this system, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he continues to grow and progress. You got Dylan Sampson, he is on the Cleveland Browns. Shout out to him. But, that was a huge part of the offense last year was the production of Dylan Sampson. Randy was calling for a Heisman. So, I think still having that offensive identity, still understanding who they can be, is definitely going to be a big part of the Tennessee Volunteers season, because we had a couple losses last year where I just felt like, you didn't even look like ourselves, and those are teams that you should have beat. So to lose that game, obviously, like you said, if we end up seeing them again, who's to say you lose twice? You know what I mean? You know what the best part is about being 0-1, Tone?
What's that?
The opportunity to go 1-1. Got to get that get back, brother. Got to get that get back. So it's going to be cool, man. Expanded rosters. I think it's more fun. I think that was a big part of why I wasn't into college football early on in my life, was just because it was like, all right, well, my team lost a game, so see you next year. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like imagine Texas. If it was 5 years ago, not even 5 years ago, Texas loses the first game of the year. All right, Arch Manning season's over. You know what I mean? Like, now you never know. What do you think about it?
Oh, no, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the fact that the playoffs expanded, because, I mean, you look at Ohio State last year, they didn't win the Big Ten. Like, realistically, they would have been out of the playoffs again had it been a couple of years ago, just like they were before. I mean, they missed out to other teams. And, I mean, even when they were technically the last seed in, when they went 11-1 and they had that classic against Georgia, to go to the national title game, it was like, man, this is really good. Maybe you should expand out to other teams to see what will happen. And obviously, look at Ohio State. They were essentially a road team for like 3 out of 4 games that they went through, and they looked absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the expanded playoffs. I think it's great for college football. I think it's great because now you really can give teams the chance to lose a game and they can still grow, and it's still a chance for them to compete. Speaking of, we are going to kind of skip a topic real quick because I do want to get your thoughts, because this team actually has 2 losses on the year. And even though they are still alive for the playoffs, the ESPN predictor only gives them a 5% chance of making it now.
Oh, man.
Clemson falls to Georgia Tech literally on a last-second field goal. Like, the field goal team had to run out less than 10 seconds, get in position, kick the field goal, and they win it. That's now 2 games Clemson has lost. They won 1 against Troy, but even then they struggled in the first half. Do you think Clemson's season is over? And I ask because you used to rock with Clemson, especially with Trevor Lawrence there for a hot minute. And the preseason expectations, they were a top 4 team. Obviously, the matchup against LSU, it was like, all right, this is really going to determine how each team's season more than likely is going to go. Was Clemson able to beat an SEC team that's pretty solid? Can LSU get over its 0-5 season opener since that national championship win? How does it go? So really, it's kind of a already disappointing season for Clemson, because honestly, we're seeing a lot of the same thing we saw last year. The offense seems to struggle on paper. They have a fantastic defense, but they do not have an offense to complement it. But do you think Clemson's season's already over? Because honestly, right now, if you look at the ACC, I'm thinking it's probably going to be between Florida State and Miami for who wins the conference more likely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think everything you said is accurate, and I think having that conversation about Clemson season being over, it's kind of a broken record for me. Obviously, everybody who knows me knows I was a diehard Trevor Lawrence fan, and there was, Clemson was my first home in college football. And in fairness, Tennessee was my second, and we've been at Tennessee since, so it hasn't changed. I was more of a Trevor Lawrence fan than anything. You know what I mean? That's what I'll say. I was more of a Trevor Lawrence fan. But I think not anymore is all I'll say about that. But I definitely think it's more of a Dabo thing than it is anybody else. I think we can make the arguments about guys like Nick Saban, who said, "Hey, man, I'm not keeping up with the new era of NIL and giving everybody millions of dollars. I'm just going to go about my day and hang out with Pat McAfee." I can respect that. But Dabo's issue, really offensively, finding that offensive identity. I remember DJ was supposed to be the new savior, but that man was, if we're talking about statues and the Mannings, DJ was the biggest statue there ever was. Man had cinder block feet, but that is a whole other episode. But it definitely seems like they've had a really hard time replicating what they once had with Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence, and it really does come down to just offensive identity. I think from a scouting perspective, they really just haven't been able to find that QB1, really just getting that homegrown guy to really just come in and be the best version he can be. We say what you want about Deshaun Watson, but for them to go Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence, they really did hit it on the head. You know what I mean? Those are two. What are the top? When did Deshaun get taken? Top 3? He wasn't number 1.
No, I don't think so. I'll look it up while you're.
Because I know Mitch Trubisky was the first quarterback taken. I think Myles Garrett went number 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But Deshaun was a top 3 quarterback taken in the top 10 in 2017. Then you obviously have Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick. So for them to just completely fall off and not even have a first or second round QB since then, Tone, it definitely is a red flag. It definitely is an issue of progress, an issue of just building that camaraderie and that chemistry. I feel like in Clemson, their defense, like you said, I love them. They're if you want to talk about guys who are crowning other guys with their helmets, it's Clemson Tigers football. They are going at it. They are old school. And I love that. But from an offensive perspective, man, sometimes it feels like you're watching an Iowa game, and that's really the best way I could put it.
Yeah, so Deshaun was the 3rd quarterback taken in that draft. The first one being Mitchell Trubisky, who went 2nd overall, then Patrick Mahomes, and then Deshaun. Honestly, I think a lot of what Dabo's issue is what we kind of talked about. He doesn't like to use the transfer portal. He likes homegrown guys, and that's what Cade Klubnik is. Cade Klubnik has basically started darn near every game since his freshman year and the last 2 seasons. And I think that's honestly is what hurt Dabo, because while you don't have to rebuild your entire roster out of the transfer portal, you could do like what LSU has done with their defense. They've supplemented players, or they've brought in key guys like, hey, you have a lot of experience. You've been at this place for 3 years. You were a top guy. We're going to bring you in for at least a year, have that experience there, bring new guys in, even, have you just be around some of the freshman guys to get them established. And I don't feel like Clemson does that. So I feel like, to me, Dabo is kind of stuck in that old Nick Saban way of, this is how we're going to do it. And either you agree or you don't agree. And I think really that's what's hurting Clemson currently, is they're kind of falling short to that. And honestly, if Dabo doesn't kind of change his ways, I think they're going to be perpetually stuck at this kind of, 9-3, maybe 10-2, just because they're in the ACC, they're going to have that chance. But I mean, you look at a team like Georgia Tech, man, they keep figuring out a way to be able to get the win and get the dub. So I mean, I'm surprised, but I'm not. Speaking of LSU, and another DJ Lagway looked like DJ Uyunglele because he threw 5 picks against LSU, one of them being a pick 6 in a 20-10 loss to LSU, which I'm not gonna lie, watching that, I was having anxiety and heart attacks that whole entire game. Because LSU struggling on offense. LSU is a fantastic defense, but offensively LSU is absolutely struggling. But it is kind of surprising, and I feel like this happens just about every year in college football. We have like 3 to 4 guys. It's like, man, these guys should be top 5 NFL picks. And this year is supposed to be Arch, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, Lenore Sellers, and DJ Lagway. And Cade Klubnik, technically 6. So there's supposed to be 6 top guys for college football. And Lagway starts off throwing 5 picks, and they're bad. They're not even like they were contested. It was just like he was trying to do the Eli, like, let me just throw it up there and just see what happens. And it was just bad, buddy. It was real bad. I don't know if you watched the game or not, but I was watching it. I'm like, ooh, this is real bad. After
I saw the lowlights, if that makes sense. I saw the lowlights on TikTok, and it reminded me a lot of, remember the arm punt days of Jay Cutler, where it was like, hey man, it's 3rd and 15. I'm gonna just chuck that shit. Jay Cutler's or Brandon Marshall's out there somewhere. You know what I mean? So I mean, it really did feel like we were just throwing that thing just to throw that thing. You know what I mean? It's definitely interesting to kind of just see someone just collapse like that, because I mean, that's the conversation. I mean, obviously one game isn't the end all be all, but that could be you going from number 3 overall to falling right outside of the top 5. You know what I mean? Like it really does come down to it, especially when you're playing a team like LSU. I think those are the games that matter, because those are the prestigious schools. That's when you really start to figure out who you are. You and I have said it for years about the guys like JJ McCarthy or Zach Wilson, that we don't care about the teams that we'll never hear of again unless we're talking about your performances. We care about how you played against some of the best to do it. So to completely shit the bed there, I mean, shout out to LSU. Got to give them their love. But man, it was man, that's all I got is man.
Yeah. Hey, Jay, appreciate you tuning in, buddy. Dude, it was bad when I was watching it. And to be honest too, what really hurt Florida is the fact that they lost the previous week to USF. And so they went from being like 13th ranked to they were out of the rankings. USF jumped to 18. USF then gets destroyed by Miami, who Florida faces next week. And then they get beat by LSU. Lagway throws 5 picks. It's going to be really rough for Florida. And again, it doesn't get any easier because they have to face LSU. They have to face Miami next week. They're going to have to face Texas at the beginning of October. Like, they have a lot of tough games and tough opponents that they have to face coming into the season.
And for you, because college is such a different game than it is in the NFL. We've seen Bryce Young get benched in the NFL as of recently, and we're hearing whispers about maybe a Caleb Williams, but doubt it. In college, it's a lot easier to just bench a guy and try to move on. Do you think another couple bad games, maybe not 5 picks in a game bad, but hey, maybe we have a couple turnovers and we're losing. Do you see there being a potential change at quarterback?
I don't see a potential change at quarterback, but I see a potential change at head coach. And I say
we've
that
had a lot of coaches fired so far too, which is crazy.
Have. We'll get into that in just a second, because there's another guy I think is probably going to be next on the chopping block if Billy Napier hasn't already beat him to it. I think Billy Napier gets fired before DJ Lagway gets benched, because I will say colleges are similar to NFL programs because the admin presidents and whatnot, they do have a say. Like, you look at the hype that DJ Lagway has, you look at the talent that he has. I have a buddy at work that's actually a Florida fan. He kind of compared him to Anthony Richardson as an overall talent level, which I could see. He is a runner. He does have a big arm, and when he's healthy, he has a great winning record. But he's got to be healthy. He's got to be able to make it work. And I'll be honest, if I have to pick between a potential generational quarterback that we've seen flashes of greatness from, and maybe it's the coach that's coaching him who has not met expectations. Billy Napier is, I think, 20-20 going into his 4th season now with this loss to LSU. He's a great recruiter. He has like one of the top recruiting classes coming into next year, but you can't seem to put all of that together. And it reminds me a lot of Texas A&M. Texas A&M has had the same issue for years. They've always had one of the top draft classes. They've never been able to put it together, and they absolutely suffer for it. So I think, honestly, Billy Napier gets fired before DJ Lagway gets benched. And so Jay brought up a good point. Does college football collectively use Nico and set an example? I'll be honest. Yeah, that whole thing, like, and I know I kind of talked about it a little bit on TikTok. Nico he needs to stop listening to whoever is giving him advice that's giving him advice currently. You left Tennessee for another program, and I know he wanted to go back to California, even though he moved all of his family out to Tennessee, which is crazy, by the way. You wanted to do it, one, for money, and you left a state that had no state taxes, so you would have actually kept more of your money, to a state that has some of the highest taxes in the country, in California. And not only do you go to a school in LA, which is fine if you want to go back to LA, you pick like the worst school to go to as far as like athletic programming for football. Like, if you wanted to go to USC with Lincoln Riley, I'd be like, hey, he has a history of turning guys into Heisman winning quarterbacks. I understand completely.
Caleb was the number 1 overall pick 2 years ago. No receivers. So whatever,
like he's turned Caleb into a Heisman winning quarterback, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen, he had Jalen for just a year after he won a national title at Alabama, and he wasn't that far off from being in the Heisman contention either. So, I mean, I could get that, but you're like, I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm going to go to UCLA because I think they're a quarterback away. And you're now 0-3 to start the season. 2 of those losses being to a group of 6 colleges, and it's really, really bad. But real quick, one thing I wanted to touch on, Wisconsin faced Alabama for 2 second year straight. They faced Wisconsin last year. Main quarterback got hurt. They had a backup. They go to Tuscaloosa this time. Wisconsin comes in with a backup quarterback already because their main quarterback got hurt, and they get destroyed again. To me, my 2 biggest questions. One is, what is Luke Fickell going for his identity? Because he doesn't do like what the old Wisconsin used to do, like what Paul Chryst used to do. And Mike, you probably remember, how many great running backs did we used to see come out of Wisconsin when Paul Chryst was the head coach? Because you had Melvin Gordon, you had Jonathan Taylor, you had Braylon Allen, like you had top tier guys. They almost always had a complimentary, tough, big offensive line to go along with it. Like, if you drafted a dude out of Wisconsin or Iowa on the offensive line, you're getting an absolute dog. Like, you are getting a nasty big dude that's going to absolutely protect whoever is quarterback or running back behind him. And typically Wisconsin also had really good defensive linemen too. Now they don't have any of that. They don't pass well. They don't run well. They don't do defense well. They don't do anything well. And so, to me, I think Luke Fickell is the next to be fired. Like, they already broke their streak. They had like 23 years of pretty much going bowling 23 years in a row. And that streak got broken last year because they went 5-7.
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't done anything. I haven't seen anything that's been established at Wisconsin. And to me, I think, honestly, Luke Fickell will probably be fired next if I had to take an absolute pick. The other thing, though, that I do have a question about, because they got destroyed by Alabama has bounced back since their embarrassment at Florida State. They beat the snot out of ULM. They beat the snot out of Wisconsin. Here's my question to you, buddy, because you do follow college football, and I've been all aboard the Alabama getting destroyed by Florida State. Do we think Florida State was just really that good and they beat a good Bama team? I don't think that's likely. Or do we think Bama's just doing what Bama should be doing? They're beating up cupcake teams like they're supposed to. They look good now, but then they're going to potentially go back to being mid, if not bad, when they face true SEC contention here coming up soon, when they have to face Georgia, when they have to face Tennessee, when they have to face LSU. Like, do you think if Florida State's just that good, or do you think Alabama was just, they look good right now, but that's going to change?
I think Florida State can look that good, but it's what level of good are we talking about? Are we talking about good or are we talking about great? And I think when you're facing off against a team like Alabama, a very young team, very prominent, I think they can be very successful in future years, but I definitely do think they make a lot of rookie dumb decisions. And I definitely think when you have such a young core without that instilled culture, because you got to think, you are taking arguably the greatest culture in college football history under Nick Saban, taking that away. Now you kind of feel like you have not free reign to do whatever you want, but guys who went there thinking that they were going to be coached till their knees fell off by Nick Saban. Now a lot longer of a leash, I'd say. You know what I mean? A lot longer of a leash and get away with a lot more. You see a lot of the cupcake shit we talk about a lot kind of happening in their touchdown celebrations and how they go about their day to day. They always say when it comes to hard work and talent is great. You know what I mean? Especially in football, but the hard workers who outwork talent are going to beat them every single time when talent doesn't work hard. And that's just what it's going to come down to. You know what I mean? It's hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. That's the saying that Kobe said, so many others have said. And I think that's really true with Alabama. They are talented enough to get to the dance. But when they start seeing them 10 out of 10 start walking in the room, I mean, we got a couple, you might turn into a wallflower. You know what I mean? That's what it is at the end of the day. And as far as Wisconsin goes, because as a Bears fan, Wisconsin is fun because they remind you of the Bears. They are going to give you legendary linebackers and here and there, every now and again, one of the greatest running backs you've ever seen play in college football. And when you look at the stats, I mean, outside of Russell Wilson, what quarterback has really come out of there? But you're looking at Jonathan Taylor, who was really the main guy who introduced me to the Badgers. I remember watching every single one of his games. It was legendary. If I had a license at the time, I would have drove all the way up to Wisconsin just to go to a game. Jonathan Taylor, TJ Watt, Jake Ferguson, tight end. Obviously Van Ginkel from the Minnesota Vikings, who's incredible. Zach Bond, and then he's on the Eagles, and then TJ Edwards, Bears. But you also
had JJ Watt, you had Melvin Gordon, both come from there too.
Those, by the way, were just currently in the league. And it's not Leo Chenal, I believe his name, on the Kansas City Chiefs. Don't know who that is, but shout out to him. Probably a champion, I would guess, or at least been to a Super Bowl. So we'll see. But no, man, I definitely think when it comes to the Badgers, it's just what kind of school are you? And what kind of conversations are we having? And I can't speak for, all the boosters and everybody in the organization who is at the higher ups, but I think that's the identity that the school wants. I don't see them going out of their way to become a gunslinging team. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely do think that they would rather run the rock and play good defense. And I think that's more so just a knock on the school and the organization than it really is on any part of the coaching staff, because outside of Russell Wilson, Tone, I mean, the quarterback position has never been the main focus for that team.
Yeah, it was almost always, especially under the Paul Chryst era, which, I mean, at least recently they had a ton of success. Again, great running back, powerful offensive line, control the trenches, run the ball down their throat, and then you had, great pass rushers in TJ and JJ, rushing the quarterback to sack him. So, I mean, that was what they're known for. And then, they fired him mid-season. And then they bring in Luke Fickell the next year after Luke Fickell did great with Cincinnati. I mean, he was the guy that recruited and got Sauce Gardner drafted. Like, dude can, recruit players pretty well. It's weird to now when I look at Wisconsin, I'm like, what do y'all do well? Like, I don't like y'all don't lead the country in anything. Y'all don't do anything well. Like, it's just kind of sad to see a school that, again, historically has been pretty good. Like, they used to always give at least Ohio State kind of fits, and now it's like, it's Wisconsin. We can, as long as we don't have to go up to Camp Randall, as long as we don't have to go to Wisconsin, we'll probably be able to beat them.
They're turning into a U of I type of school, and that's kind of like where I'll leave it with that. But by the way, I did want to mention it because I don't know why every time something with college happens, I think of you first, but I'm happy I do. Desmond Ridder back in Cincinnati, hasn't been there since he played with Tyler Scott in Cincinnati in college. Now he's going to be the backup, I imagine, or maybe the starter. We'll see for the Cincinnati Bengals. So kind of cool to see him go back to Cincinnati. I think that's kind of a I like Desmond Ridder a lot. I had a lot of promise for him. I thought he was going to maybe be what Michael Penix is now. Didn't know if you wanted to touch on that, but I thought it was kind of cool.
We can. We'll touch on that here in a little bit when we talk about Joe Burrow being out. But we do gotta discuss a little bit. We don't have to do it long, but we gotta discuss a little bit. You know, the Bears fall in Ben Johnson's return to Detroit. In a very unfortunate matter, the Lions are able to drop 52 points on Ben Johnson. And the biggest thing I wanted to ask you, because I know you and I kind of talked about it, and again, I always love our conversations because I feel like they're interesting because we both got good perspectives. We both kind of fire back and forth, and I feel like it both leads us to good ideas. I had mentioned how Colin Cowherd brought up a good point of look at what Carolina did with Bryce Young last year. Don't look at this year because this year he looks like Bryce Young being Bryce Young. You know, they benched him, let him kind of finally learn behind a veteran guy like Andy Dalton and whatnot. And then he comes back and he lights the league up. He's on fire. What if we potentially do the same for Caleb if they lose this next game for whatever reason? You know, whoever Cowherd had on his podcast with him kind of brought up a good point. If you bench Caleb and you let Tyson Bagent take over, albeit Tyson Bagent does only have a year ahead of him, so he's not that much of a veteran. You do have Case Keenum in that locker room as well with him. So you could honestly let either one of them take over, just see what you got, let Caleb really take a step back and learn, kind of get better learning the system, get better learning the offense, kind of see somebody else play the position for his team and with his guys, and then maybe put him back in a couple weeks and be like, all right, man, you've had a chance to, stop getting hit for a couple weeks. You can still go through the routine, still go through the practice. You're just not going to play because realistically, if they still lose games, I mean, okay, maybe you still lose with Caleb, but at least Caleb's not taking the hits. He's not throwing the picks. His confidence isn't being destroyed because it's like, man, I'm going out here every week. I'm doing everything that I can, and we're still not winning games. You can push the fallout to somebody else, and it gives him a chance to really sit back and learn and see, okay, what mistakes am I making? What mistakes are they making? And then kind of fine tune it from there. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I know some people are like, man, don't bench your guy. He's still got to learn. And I don't disagree. He does need to eventually learn. But my counter to that is how many times have we seen great quarterbacks be drafted, first overall in the first round, Cleveland, and these guys get thrown to the fire, Anthony Richardson. And while, yes, they're getting the experience and they're learning, they're not having a chance to grow. So they end up being labeled as quote unquote bust because they just got thrown to the fire. Like, just let's see what happens. Just go. And I feel like a lot of those guys, it doesn't pan out. Trevor Lawrence, it hasn't panned out well for him in Jacksonville. Like, we still have questions about him. Anthony Richardson.
That entire class, though, Tone, we can go Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. We can name all 5 of the top QBs from that class, all thrown in the fire, all except Trevor Lawrence on different teams right now. I mean, that's the reality of what's happened when you go from we're going to sit guys for a year and let them learn to just throwing them in right away. We've seen the change. And that's why I stopped it right there, because that was the first thing that clicked. I was like, you have a great point. But I also think in a situation like this, personnel is everything. And I think for Caleb Williams, who is a Heisman winner, is the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, I haven't seen a lot of ego out of Caleb Williams, but it's there from a quarterback perspective. So benching him 3 games, let's say 4 games into the season, if that is the case for Tyson Bagent, an undrafted guy out of a D2 school, who all power to him. I love Agent Bagent. That's my guy. He's a Slim Shady type of guy. He's all like He reminds me so much of the movie 8 Mile because he just like he gets it out the mud, man. Tyson Bagent is fun, but it's one of those things where it's like I've seen Tyson Bagent play football. I've seen him start over Justin Fields, and that didn't go well for Justin Fields. I think for Caleb Williams, if you bench him, I think you lose his relationship with Ben Johnson very early into their partnership. You know what I mean? And that's a problem. And maybe that's not a huge problem for Ben. You know what I mean? Maybe Ben doesn't see him being the guy of the future. Maybe he does. And if that's the case, then you're not going to see it at all. Tone, to answer your question, because I don't want to like move around it. I think the guy we're looking at from a completely like I don't want to avoid the question. I'll answer it first before anything. But I don't think you bench Caleb Williams. I think that really hurts the ego of a quarterback. I really think that demoralizes you and realizes that, hey man, I see Casey Keenum out there, Tyson Bagent out there with my guys, you know, because they don't think I'm the guy. Like, what do you mean? I was just a number 1 overall pick. I've been here longer than you. Like it would really rub me the wrong way because, and I'll even take it a step further. You didn't do that in year 1 when I got sacked 68 times. You didn't bench me when we lost 10 games in a row. You made me go out there and you made me fucking eat it every single play. Yep. So now you're going to bench me 3 games into my new season with my new offensive line when I'm not playing that bad. You know, his connection with DJ Moore against not DJ Moore, pardon me, because DJ Moore's been nowhere, but we don't have enough time for that. But his connection with Rome Odunze is there and very much alive. And I think for me, Tone, the conversation isn't Ben Johnson not the guy we thought he was? Is Caleb not the guy we thought he was? It becomes Ryan Poles because fast forward 4 years since taking this job, I think the Chicago Bears are in the same place they were when we got them. And that's good players, big contracts. You know, we got a lot going on right now. We got a young QB, but we got to win games. Since becoming the GM of the Chicago Bears, he has drafted 0 Pro Bowlers. It has been 4 years. His defense has given up 50-plus points in a game for the first time in over 10 years. I mean, it is astonishing to me that this defense has gotten worse and worse every year while he's been the GM. And why does that happen? A lot of people gave me shit. A lot of people came at me telling me that Luther Burden III was going to be the best receiver out of this wide receiver group and Colston Loveland's that guy. I have no problem with either of them, but what I do have a problem with is you drafted Rome in the top 10. You extended DJ Moore, and you still took a wide receiver in the second round when you didn't address the defense or the offensive line. Just a little bit more of offensive line help could never hurt. And now you have Luther Burden III on special teams because he's not good enough to be a part of the offense. What happened to this guy is going to be the next Justin Jefferson? And then Colston Loveland. I mean, first of all, Colston Loveland's not getting any tick right now. And I kind of understand that because he is a rookie. The Brock Bowers of the world are very rare for a tight end position. But then Cole Kmet's not doing shit either. And you gave him a 4-year, $50 million deal. So, Tone, you're seeing a lot of holes on this team because Ryan Poles loves to just go for the shiny new toy. Let's not address the trenches. Let's not get another pass rusher alongside a guy like Montez Sweat. We'll take Austin Booker because he had 3 sacks in a preseason game. Like, to me, it's Ryan Poles at the end of the day. Like, look, you had 2 number 1 overall picks. 2. And, you know, a lot of the guys that turned into what you got for Bryce Young from Carolina was DJ Moore, Caleb Williams, Darnell Wright, a couple other guys, and Tyreek Stevenson. But this defense is terrible at the end of the day. I know, long tangent. Sorry, we're talking Bears too long. But for me, a lot of Caleb talk, a lot of Ben Johnson talk, and not a lot of talk about this defense. And the guy who created this defense is Ryan Poles. You know, Caleb did not play defense on Sunday against the Detroit Lions. He dropped 21 points. And say what you want. I mean, just a couple years ago, I was happy with 5 points. Not 5 points. I was happy with 10 points by the Bears. So 21 is solid.
And to be honest, most of the time, at least what I used to hear from old school football, man, if you can score at least 3 touchdowns, you're probably going to win the game.
And, you know, and if we're going to talk Bengals in a little bit too, but the Bears and the Bengals are in such a similar situation where it's like, man, you got to drop 40 just to feel like you're in the game. You know what I mean?
and hope that the other team doesn't score 41. Like
yeah,
that.
And they do. And they do. You know what I
Just,
mean? And they always will. The Bears in what was the stat I saw earlier? In 335 days, the Chicago Bears have won one football game. They are
yep.
1 for their last 13. So
Yep. Yeah,
that's what I got on that.
Yeah, I saw that stat. Like Caleb has lost 12 of his last 13 games that he's started, and
But
that one was against Green Bay.
yep,
Green Bay.
Hey, can't be mad. Can't be mad at it, right?
But no, to your point, because you brought him up, and that'll be our next and our last topic for the night.
Sure.
You know, Joe Burrow. You know, he tore multiple ligaments in his toe. You know, I was going to ask, you know, who's to blame, because realistically, and it's funny because somebody finally brought up the statistics of it, of like how many times like Andrew Luck was sacked in like 74 games as compared to how many Joe Burrow's been sacked in like 80.
Yeah.
The number is like 100 different of like Joe Burrow has been sacked more. And realistically, like you look at it, it's not that far off. Now, Andrew Luck never went to a Super Bowl, but he took the Colts to an AFC championship against the Pats where, you know, he got, you know, blitzkrieged through and whatnot. You know, Joe Burrow took the Bengals all the way to the Super Bowl when he was healthy, and albeit they were damn close to winning the whole entire thing if it wasn't for the fact of, you know, Matt Stafford and OBJ and Aaron Donald. You know, it really realistically, I do kind of see this Bengals team not only, you know, real similar to the Bears, but even those early Colts days with Andrew Luck, you know, you do have a dynamic wide receiver in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You know, the Colts still had Reggie Wayne and T.Y. Hilton, who's a rookie coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had a fairly okay defense. Wasn't anything to, you know, write home about, but it was okay. But that offensive line and no running game. And that's the other thing the Bengals don't have. The Bengals don't have a running game. The Colts didn't have a running game. And it wasn't until basically right before Luck finally retired, you know, they were like, oh, we should probably build you an offensive line. Here's Quentin Nelson. Here's all these guys. We'll finally get you an offensive line. Like, what is it going to take for the Bengals to do that for Joe Burrow? Like, your quote unquote best offensive line piece is Orlando Brown Jr., and he's on, I think, his third team. And it's like, oh yeah, he's doing great. I'm seeing him get beat constantly. Now the difference is they do have a Trey Hendrickson who has led the league in sacks, and they were picking Trevor Lawrence off left and right Sunday. Like it was not, I think he threw like 3 picks if I remember correctly. I don't know if he threw any more after that, but I know for sure he threw 3. Like, do you think it's kind of the same? Do you think it's Cincinnati's GM, or do you think it's the ownership to blame? Kind of similar to the Bears, honestly. Like, who would you blame for Burrow getting hurt now, second year in a row with a really weird injury? And, you know, he's like, Joe Burrow's probably my favorite quarterback to watch because I watched him at LSU and I've loved watching him play for the Bengals. Like, you know, it's going to suck if he has to retire early because he's such a great player.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely do think it is a GM conversation. But where is because look, there's levels to this shit, man. Like we look at guys that Ryan Poles drafted on the Bears. Let's talk about a few wide receivers the Chicago Bears have drafted in recent years. We got Cincinnati legend. You got Tyler Scott. Oh, Velus Jones Jr., who had his own episode on Hard Knocks. Now he's cut. Same season, got cut, by the way. 3 different positions. It was crazy. Then you got traded a second-round pick for Chase Claypool, and then Luther Burden III, who's on special teams, and Roma Dunze.
Did he draft Darnell Mooney, or was Darnell Mooney already there when
he did not draft Darnell Mooney? Darnell Mooney was one of the last wide receivers taken in the Ryan Pace era, which ironically now works in Atlanta. Darnell Mooney's in Atlanta, so I'd like to see them reunite. By the way, the number 1 on an Atlanta Falcon jersey looks hideous, by the way. I saw that the other day.
Their jerseys are just awful. They need to go back to like the old 2016, 2017 because these jerseys are not it. They're
terrible.
Bad.
I mean, even the numbers. I mean, is that a 1 or a 7, brother? Like I don't know.
It's supposed to be like little claw at the bottom of it. I'm like, no, I'm not rocking with it.
Not rocking with it at all. What is this, Vampira? Anyways, but no, I think in this situation, like I brought up those Bears numbers because all those guys are solid. Rome's great, but none of them are Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or Joe Burrow. You know what I mean? And I think where, you know, Ryan Poles likes to just continue getting the flashy toys and then, you know, regroup every now and again. With the Bengals, it's, man, I don't want to let go of those flashy toys. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think the biggest mistake for the Cincinnati Bengals was extending T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins should have been the guy that left. Obviously, it's a lot easier to find a wide receiver too than it is to find a top tier offensive linemen in the second, third round, fourth round of the draft. And obviously free agency, you just don't see it a lot. A lot of guys get extended in their home or where they're currently at. Or when they do end up being a free agent, they're older, more injury prone. You know, like if you trade for Quentin Nelson now, it's like, that's cool, but I would have liked that 3-4 years ago. So I definitely think the issue with them is Trey Hendrickson, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Those four right there running all the way to the bank, except Joe. I think Joe will be limping to the bank, but he'll get there eventually. He'll get there like 2-3 business days after everybody else. But
he'll be like that old snail on SpongeBob when they did the race. Like he finally gets there at the very end.
Patrick's Rock. It's okay.
Yeah,
Rock.
it's okay, Rocky. Take your time. And then he ends up winning it.
I definitely do think that is the case where it's just like you have your flashy players, you have your stars, and you just didn't know when to say when. Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins, in my opinion, should have moved on. And that's just what it is. And I said it a million times. I wanted the Bears to sign T. Higgins. I didn't think Cincinnati was going to bring him back. So it's crazy to me that that's the case. I think you let's say we trade away Trey Hendrickson or you let T. Higgins walk. You got a whole new offensive line right there, man. Because, you got so much money in them.
I say honestly, and even if you trade, like get the trade value back, get a couple that like you could have easily, I don't know if you could get a first for T, you could at minimum get a second or a third. And that may not be a starting guy, but that's your backup. Like that's good depth. That could be a starter eventually.
Get something.
Same with Trey Hendrickson. Like, no, you're probably not going to get a first, but you get a couple seconds out of him. You get maybe a second and a third both.
You'll get a second and a third and free up $30 million. That's what it is. But last one, because I wanted to throw this one to you, brother man. That was how I wanted to end the show.
Okay.
Do you think, knowing that Joe Burrow is likely going to be out for 3 months at minimum, the Bengals have to say, look, man, we got no money. We got no money this year. We got no money next year or the year after that. Do you just tank out and try to get the highest draft pick you can possibly get? Even though you have Jamar Chase, which I have him in fantasy, it would hurt my heart. But what do you think?
I don't think they do. Like, all honesty, like if it was me, because I would try to be a smart GM and I wouldn't try to put myself in this position, I would go to Joe and be like, look, buddy, we need to reposition we need to restructure your contract. But when we do, buddy, we're throwing money in free agency at O-line. We're going to draft O-line. Like, we're going to do everything we can to make this happen. And I do the same thing with T. Higgins. I do the same thing with Jamar. Like, look, this is what we got to do.
You ain't doing that with Jamar. I'll tell you that right now. Jamar request a trade just for you thinking that.
maybe, but hey, a closed mouth don't get fed. All I gotta do is ask. If you tell me no, you tell me go F myself, and it is what it is. But I gotta try nonetheless.
Yeah.
But buddy, it's been fun. We do gotta cut it short though, because I don't want to run anybody else's time. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you liked it, please check out Inside the Hoosier Mind. Also check out the Shy Kid, Mike Hughes. He got great stuff, as well as the rest of MBR. And we will see y'all next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you